For over 15 years, Saturdays and Illegal Curve have been synonymous with one another. With insight, analysis, and interviews regarding the Winnipeg Jets, the Manitoba Moose, and all around the NHL, here are Dave Manouk, Ezra Ginsburg, and your host, Drew Mindell. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show, presented by Play Now, the official sports betting partner of the Winnipeg Jets, starts now.
Good morning, Winnipeg. Good morning, Manitoba. For all those joining us live this morning on our YouTube channel and all of our social media platforms, we say good morning, universe, and welcome to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Along with Ezra Ginsburg, along with Dave Manouk, I'm your host, Drew Mindell, here for the next couple of hours talking all about the Winnipeg Jets, victorious last night over the Utah Hockey Club. Next in action Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening against the Calgary Flames, before the schedule turns its focus to the Eastern Conference, as after Sunday, it's nothing but Eastern Conference opponents until the Four Nations Cup break. Lots to get into on this Saturday morning. Gentlemen, great to see you. We last got together about 11 hours ago or so, but it's great to see you again to get started with our weekly 2-hour recap and discussion of all things Winnipeg Jets.
I guess it's great to see you, Drew, but do I really have a choice? I'm forced to see you every Saturday, so I guess I have to say that. But no, obviously, boys,
this isn't indentured servitude. You have a choice. You can do what you want.
Obviously, a big night, boys, last night for Cole Perfetti and the Jets. They get their revenge on the Utah Hockey Club. It was just like I was telling you guys after the show, like that was just like one of those nights that was just like really fun to do the post-game show. The chat was really lively. Obviously, it was a super fun Friday night for all in attendance downtown at Canada Life Center. But the Jets needed a win like that, because let's be honest here, guys, those two losses to Calgary and Utah, the one against Utah was obviously more ugly, because the loss to Calgary, that was Dustin Wolf's performance, I would argue, was the big reason why I think the Jets deserved at least a point in that game. But they needed a clean win like this, right? And we talked about it on the post-game show. Utah ties it up in the third period, but really, you could make an argument they really had no business being in this game, and the Jets could have put in a couple more goals, and it wouldn't have been that close in the third period, right, Dave? So
yeah,
you'd like to see it. And for a guy like Perfetti, who has obviously struggled to put the puck in the net, there was no guy that you were happier to get a hat trick than Perfetti last night.
Well, it's funny because as Mike McIntyre pointed out yesterday, because he only had I think 2 assists in the 14 games, and both of those came in the same game. Right. Or something like that. So it was quite a stretch in quite a drought for Cole Perfetti. And I think to expand it to his line, I think the critical part of the win was the fact that it was the second line, not the top line, that was the one that were the drivers. They were the ones that produced all the offense. And I think that is, not literally all the offense, but they produced the offense when it was needed. Not obviously one of the goals was a power play goal, but I just mean that we've been looking at the Scheifele line, Velarde and Connor as the line, the drivers, and they're the best line on the team. And there's a reason why they produce most nights. But when there's a night where they're not producing, to be able to get that secondary offense, to be able to get the scoring from that second line has been something we've been talking about for a long time. It's something that is critically needed. And so for them to be able to do that is what I took away from last night's game as significant. Obviously, Cole Perfetti Cole the Prick Perfetti, achieving what he was. Well, we should have like a little thing, a counter at the bottom, say prick count, and we'll just see how many times we can say it. So far, I'm up to 2.
Cole the Prick Perfetti also kind of sounds like he could be like a character in Snatch or something, right?
Yeah, exactly. So
Guy Madden movie.
Yeah, that's great movie, actually. It's one of my favorites of all time. But yeah,
Dags?
What's
Dags. You like Dags?
Yeah. But no, what I was going to say is that I just think that from that perspective, it's and of course, one game, which we said we were getting when we were getting this show started before we actually Drew hit the go live button, was the fact that, this is one game does not make a season. And so you need to have that continuity throughout the game against Calgary and then the games out east. So that'll be something that we're going to consider, of course. But it just seems to be that if you can get that second line going and however they're going to look, obviously Adam Lowry, we know is going to be out for a while longer. So not a little while, a while longer. So that to me is critically important. And if yesterday was the catalyst to get it started, that's going to be a really good thing for the Winnipeg Jets.
Okay, Drew, sorry, before we go back to you, like we've got the chat is fired up this morning. I absolutely love it. I'm fired it up too. I've only had one cup of coffee, but can we talk about, there's got to be somebody in Winnipeg that's going to print a bunch of pricks t-shirt or something like that.
Ooh.
Like, I feel like this is gonna.
Dave's eyes just saw dollar signs.
Okay, I gotta go. I'll see you guys later.
Somebody, Jets Nation, make it happen. Bunch of pricks.
Yeah, piggybacking on the Hurricanes, from the number of years ago. Of course, they leaned into that, and that certainly was a good marketing campaign for them. For the Winnipeg Jets, though, a victory last night. I want to sort of take a step back. It was earlier this week on the road trip, as it always happens on the road trip, where Kevin Cheveldayoff tends to sit down with the limited media that travel with the team. In this case, it was Murat Atesh of The Athletic, and it was Mike McIntyre of the Winnipeg Free Press. They sat down in Colorado, and they spent, I think Mike said 60 minutes, 90 minutes, something along those lines, really doing a deep dive into this Winnipeg Jets team at the halfway point. We haven't had an opportunity to sort of kick around Kevin Cheveldayoff's comments and discuss what the Jets general manager said. As per usual, he kept his cards pretty close to his vest.
Shocker.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's sort of delve through the subject matter, and we can bandy that about. Start with the Jonathan Toews comments, in that he's had conversations. There's a mutual interest, but that later in the week, based on Pierre LeBrun's reporting, seems like that's more of a next year thing rather than a this year thing. And frankly, I think that's probably the better mindset for the Jets to, be looking at when it comes to Jonathan Toews. I don't know that trying to put him into your lineup, having not played for a number of years, right in the stretch drive of a season, makes a lot of sense for any of the people involved. So good food for thought, something to keep an eye on, throughout the summer and, throughout the off season. But I think it's probably right that that's not a today, here and now reality for the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, the key thing that you mentioned there, Drew, is that Jonathan Toews has not played in 2 years. So this is a 36-year-old Jonathan Toews and a guy who's not played since the 22-23 season, right? And I think look, Toews is a future Hall of Famer. Nobody's going to argue that on this show. Nobody's going to argue that in the chat. Anybody who watches hockey knows Jonathan Toews will be a future Hall of Famer. But the reality is there's a lot of uncertainty here. And I think when you throw up a guy's name who has a rink named after him in St. Vital, and he's got a lake in Manitoba or Lake of the Woods, I forget where exactly it is. But
Northern Manitoba.
Northern Manitoba, there. You've got a lake.
There's a lot of lakes. I'm pretty sure there's a Ginsburg Lake up there.
Oh, yeah, I don't think so. Maybe around the Flin Flon area, but
Yeah,
I don't
come
think
on,
so.
guys.
I think
Flin
it's
Flon.
what is it? I think Phantom Lake is the lake up there. But what I'm trying to say here is the Jonathan Toews name is about as big as it gets. Like, Toews' name is up there with Bobby Clark. It's up there with whoever, Ed Belfour, the greats in Manitoba hockey, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that when you start throwing around his name, people start to get really excited. But I just think, guys, this is to think that he was going to come back this year and play for the Jets and help them win the Stanley Cup, I just think was not realistic. And we'll see. Maybe if he's in good shape and the Jets think that there's a role for him on the team next year, then okay, I'm willing to talk about that at this point. But I think it was always kind of a pie in the sky idea to think that Toews was going to come back after not having played for a couple of seasons, and he was going to, be a contributor and help the Jets win a Stanley Cup. I just didn't think it was ever realistic for the 24-25 season, but who knows? Maybe for the 25-26 season, Dave, it's something that happens. But I would have to think that if Toews is coming back, it's not to be a top six guy. No. It would be to be a third line, fourth line contributor. And I imagine it would probably only be on a 1-year contract.
And as somebody who used to be on this show famously said, there's really no such thing as a bad 1-year contract. The risk on a 1-year deal is usually well worth the reward. Right. And if the contract doesn't work out well, it's 1 year. It's not, c'est la vie.
And Drew, he's not getting $6 million a year. I mean, let's be honest here. It's going to be probably $1 to $2 million contract, something like that. I
don't think it's about the money for Jonathan Toews by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think he's looking to, go to San Jose and get a big deal for 1 year, right. Just, to play on a bad team. He's looking to come back and make an impact on a team that has, Stanley Cup aspirations, or at least on paper seems like a quality organization, Dave.
Yeah, I mean, all the things we know is that there's mutual interest between Jonathan Toews and the Winnipeg Jets. We know that it seems like Friedman and LeBron have both indicated that it's likely for next season. So, I mean, it really kind of quashes the conversation for Winnipeg and our purposes as it approaches the trade deadline, because it doesn't seem like it's going to be an option for them. Now, I would only argue that none of us have any idea, other than the GQ article where he expressed his desire to. I know as he's got a subscription to GQ, but having once graced the cover, I should
Shadow Lane as well.
Yes. Well, both as he's graced both covers, but in addition to Play Girl. But the point is, but the point I'm making is that none of us really know what condition he's in, and so we can all speculate and we can say, well, he's this. And like, it's all well and good. It's all part of the conversation, but none of us know. So it's very hard to have an informed discussion with respect to Toews and his abilities. Like,
but just hold on a second though, Dave. Even if he was, let's say he's in the best shape of his life.
Sure.
Like, let's just look at it like that. Even if he's in the best physical shape of his life, like he's been doing 1,000 crunches a day during a spiritual journey in India. Okay. Like,
but you do 1,000 crunches. Is that
KFC crunches though? There's what Ezzy does. He does the KFC crunches.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that, Drew. Yeah. We have to get that in there. But I mean, like, let's assume, Dave, that he is, like, he still hasn't played in 2 years. I'm furthering your point. Like, I'm adding to your point and saying, like, we have absolutely no idea what kind of Jonathan Toews would be coming back. Right. Yeah. So that's why I always thought it was kind of a pipe dream to think he was going to be coming back this year. Now that and this is why the insiders make the big money. Pierre LeBrun, Chris Johnston, Elliot Friedman, Dregs.
I'm honestly not sure why they make any money, but that's a separate issue altogether.
Well, because they're what do you mean?
They have
all the scoops.
Yeah,
they've got all the goodies. So I mean, now it's like you said, Dave, it's clear that it's going to be next year, but I still have questions about how effective of a player he can be next year.
No, and I think it's fair. And I think that's why you would sign him to maybe a PTO to start, see how he can get through training camp. And that's generally what happens with guys who are older. We just saw Sam Gagner, former Winnipeg Jet, come back. He signed a PTO with the Belleville Senators. So look,
I thought he officially announced his retirement last year, but maybe that was just me.
I don't know.
You announced your retirement officially last year?
Bye, Ginsburg. See you later. Anyways, I just to quickly kind of wrap up my thought. I just think that, it's just hard to, like I just said, we try and have informed discussions, and it's difficult to know with that part of the equation somewhat as an unknown. So we can say, oh, he's not ready. Drew, you literally have no idea if he's been skating every day with guys who are X, Y, or Z. I'm just saying that none of us know that. So I couldn't tell you one way or the other if Jonathan Toews is ready to play. He clearly isn't, because if he was, he'd be signaling that and he'd be garnering more interest. So the fact that those guys are reporting that it's not going to be till next year means, to confirm Ezzy's point, that he's probably not ready to be in the league this year, and he's not going to do something like a guy who has three Stanley Cups.
Guys, he might not play in the NHL ever again. Like, that's,
right. But my point I'm making is that
here, right?
But what I'm saying is that the guy with 3 Stanley Cups, a guy with Olympic golds, he's not going to embarrass himself. And so at the end of the day,
nothing to prove, right, Dave?
Absolutely. So, I mean, while it's a great storyline, and if he could be the guy who, helps his hometown team get over the hump in the playoffs, he knows obviously what it takes to win. So if he could be that guy, that catalyst that we talk about, yeah. And again, I agree with Ezzy. It's not going to be in a first or second line center role. It would be as a third or fourth line center. And but that would have been the story. That would have been a great kind of, moment in hockey history, at least in this province. But it just seems like it's a discussion we're going to be having for next year.
And can I add one more thing, Drew, quickly? I would love to personally see Jonathan Toews in a Jets jersey. I just think that would be awesome, period. I just want to throw that in there. I'm not negative. I'm not anti Jonathan Toews. I'm just saying that let's wait and see if it actually happens.
From a marketing perspective, it would be great. Whether or not it'll work from an on ice perspective, that's a different story altogether, and time will tell on that front. Further to Kevin Cheveldayoff's media availability down in Denver, a lot of the time was spent talking about everybody's favorite player and everybody's favorite hot button issue, that being, of course, the deployment and usage of Logan Stanley. Kevin Cheveldayoff defended the Winnipeg Jets' big defenseman. He defended the deployment of Stanley, saying that, Cheveldayoff, has never told a coach who to play and who not to play. The quote, "I've never told a coach who to put in the lineup." specifically to Logan and the roster in general. Coaches make decisions on the roster. Who's in, who's out. We have 8 defensemen. It's our Neil's choice who to play, said Cheveldayoff. Coaches make decisions. I've never seen a coach make a decision not with the best interest of trying to win. And he goes on from there. And some of the other comments he had about Logan Stanley were, to me, a little bit comical. In particular, talking about how impactful Logan Stanley was in that playoff series against the Oilers back in 2021. I mean, with all due respect, it was a 4-game sample in the midst of a global pandemic, played in front of no crowd 4 years ago. So I don't take a lot of stock in that performance, which was admirable.
Well, it's funny because most people remember the 2 goals against Montreal when they were swept, right?
Well, I mean, if you want to cherry pick certain things from that, absolutely.
What I'm saying, Drew, is the sweep over the Oilers. Not many people are pointing to Logan Stanley's play as the reason why the Jets won that series.
No, they are not. They're not saying Stanley was the difference maker. He was good in that series, and he was good in that year.
He was fine.
If you remember that year, that was his best year, as an NHL player. But that was 4 years ago. I think the Jets and the organization and Cheveldayoff a little bit in his comments here are sort of just missing the forest for the trees in saying, just say that we think Stanley gives us the best chance to win. That's basically, what it is. You can twist yourself into knots all you want. Talk about him on the right side for those 5 games last year where he played briefly on the right side. Just say that we think Logan Stanley is our best option on the back end for bettering our on-ice performance.
Despite the fact that the analytics suggest otherwise.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I don't believe that, but I'm not the head coach. I'm not the general manager. If you say that, people may not like the answer. People may disagree with the answer, as they're often going to disagree with a lot of the things that are decided. But stop twisting yourself into pretzels to try to justify it when that simply probably ends the conversation to some extent, at least from their perspective. Bringing up examples from 4 years ago, to me, is just you're just using a sledgehammer to kill an ant at that point in time, Dave.
Well, I like T. Kona's point, but if you see the trees, aren't you in the forest? Well done, T. Konopoli. But
he spelled forest wrong.
Well, that doesn't matter. Come on, Drew. This isn't the spelling bee, for God's sakes. We're going to still allow T. Konopoli to have his.
I love T. Konopoli, but 1 R in forest here, people. Well, that's not that difficult.
That seems like an odd hill to die on, Drew.
Dave, could you please use T. Konopoli in a sentence?
T. Konopoli loves Tyrell Bauer. There you go. Look,
TCONA.
The fact of the matter is, we've talked about it. It feels like we've talked about it to death, to be honest with you. Obviously, Drew, you're bringing it up because it was a subject of the discussion.
Well, also, Mike, I think, asked like 3 or 4 Logan Stanley related questions, right?
Yeah. No. I mean, again, no, of course. Look, Jets fans are curious. Jets fans want to know what is the reason. But at the end of the day, and it's a conversation I was having yesterday, the fact of the matter is, this is Scott Arniel's team, and Scott Arniel ultimately gets to decide what is best. I have to dispel this notion that Kevin Cheveldayoff goes and tells the coach who to play and who not to play. I'm not saying they don't have conversations. You're always having conversations. You're always listening. You're picking up the phone. You answer the phone. You talk on the phone. But at the same time,
you own a phone.
But at the same time, like, he's not sitting there going, "This is who you need to have in your lineup." It's just not the way it is. I mean, look, and you know the reason why, and I don't remember where I saw this quote, but the whole point was, they said, ultimately, for a coach to be held accountable for the decisions that get made by the GM, it can't be the GM saying, you need to play this guy, because then it's on the GM. The coach gets to go say, well, you wanted this guy in the lineup. Sure, you win, but now if we lose, it's not on me, it's on you. So it removes that ability to have that sort of that kind of weapon against your coach if need be, ultimately. Because remember, you're always looking for the fall guy. You don't want your head to be on that chopping block. But I'm just telling you that Cheveldayoff is not telling Scott Arniel who to play, number one. And secondly, and again, we don't have to like it. But at the end of the day, Scott Arniel, who's the head coach of the team that is currently in first place, feels that his best winning lineup includes Logan Stanley.
Mhm.
So you don't have to like it. You don't have to agree with it. You can say Colin Miller should be in on the right side. I would agree with you. But at the end of the day, right now, Scott Arniel's decision, Scott Arniel, the guy who has to live and die by his decisions, thinks that Logan Stanley is the guy who keeps his lineup in it running optimally, if you will.
Drew, all I'm going to say on this, and then I know we want to get to the next topic in terms of Kevin Cheveldayoff's presser here. So I'll try to make it as quick as possible. And apologies to our boy Dom Zappia, who doesn't like to hear us talk about Stanley. I've mentioned this weeks ago. I'm tired of talking about it.
We all are.
Because obviously, let's be honest, Logan Stanley has been a whipping boy here in Winnipeg. Like, let's not, it's unfortunate for him.
And if Nick Bukestad is just a teensy tiny bit more accurate, he's probably even more of a whipping boy this morning.
It's true, guys. Like, that was a bad giveaway last night in the third period, and Bukestad hits the post or crossbar. He rang it off the iron, and if they score there, then like Stanley he's going to be criticized a lot more than
the Bluebirds.
Exactly, but the reality is, look, Dave's right. Chevy, what else is he going to say, right? He's going to, the Jets are a loyal organization. Chevy's a company man. What's he going to say? He's obviously going to say whatever he needs to explain why the organization likes Logan Stanley, a guy that they traded up to draft in 2016. And yes, he was drafted too high, guys. If you redo that draft, he's not a first round pick. I mean, let's be honest here. He's more likely a second or third round pick. But the point is that I think the reason why Jets fans are so quick to criticize him is because of the fact that the Jets have other defensemen on the left side that are better options that the analytics back up, right? Ville Heinola is one of them. Hayden Fleury is one of them. I'll say this much, though. I mean, you did see Logan Stanley jump up into the play yesterday, and he had a decent scoring chance. He couldn't elevate it past Connor Ingram. But the reality is, when you see those types of egregious mistakes like he made against Nick Bukestad, and let's be perfectly clear, he's made a lot of giveaways and he's had a lot of bad turnovers or penalties. I think people, Jets fans I'm talking about, think, and myself and the media, they, and our media colleagues, they look at Stanley and they think, well, if he's making those types of mistakes, why do they keep putting him in the lineup? Why don't they give Ville Heinola another game, or why don't they, give this player another game, right? So I think that's what it is. I don't think it's that Logan Stanley's by all accounts is a good person. It's not like his character or his personality. It's that you look at some of the other veteran defensemen that the Jets have, namely Hayden Fleury, and then when it comes to Heinola, obviously he's a younger defenseman. But I think that's what it is, guys. I think that's why Jets fans get so frustrated with Stanley, because they say, there's other options here, and sometimes he makes mistakes, and you wonder, like, is this guy really our best option as a third pairing defenseman? So anyways, that's what I think it ultimately comes down to.
Well, then let's move it on to the trade deadline. And of course, there was the huge trade. It's really a division-altering trade yesterday between the Hurricanes and the Avalanche. And then the Blackhawks were there for some reason. They don't know what the hell they're doing, but that's a separate issue that we'll get into later on in the show. And then so the conversation with Kevin Cheveldayoff, of course, circled back to the upcoming trade deadline. The Jets, were active on the trade market last year. Sean Monahan, Tyler Toffoli, Colin Miller, who seems like he's, at least as of late, been a bit of the odd man out on the right side with the Stanley experiment there. So the question was posed to Kevin Cheveldayoff, what about the trade deadline? What's happening? What do you expect to be the case around the trade deadline? And here's what he said. Quote, this is Cheveldayoff. I think the bigger question is the assessment of the market. Are there the right plugs to fill those holes? Can you make one move? Can you make two moves? Do you want to make one big move? Do you want to make two other moves? And again, who's out there? Everyone wants to say you need this. Okay, if that is not out there, you may have to focus on going at it in a different direction. I think that's where you have to have that kind of flexibility. There's probably been no better Chevy speak quote in a long time than the word salad I just uttered. He said nothing there, folks, but I think it's safe to say that the Winnipeg Jets will likely be active come trade deadline, but certainly he kept his cards pretty close to his chest on that one. I'm sure he actually may have burnt the cards altogether, because I don't know what he said there.
The best was they're like, well, you can come to Colorado if you want to be part of the interview. It's like, why? what am I going to get out of there that is actually worth my time? And the answer is a whole lot of nothing. So the fact is that, yeah, I mean, he's never going to reveal that. I mean, you heard, I don't know if you guys heard Friedman on 32 Thoughts, but he basically said, Cheveldayoff is a tough nut to crack unless you're Darren Dreger, and then you get it for free. But the point is that it isn't, he doesn't necessarily share a lot of his thoughts, and he's not going to.
And he doesn't have to, by the way.
Well, I mean,
there's no requirement that he has to, right?
No, of course not. I mean, I look, he just said, and he said it before. He said it before. He wants to reward the group for a good effort, right? That he's seen to date. So at the end of the day, I mean, you don't need him to confirm it. We know that. I mean, like I can't hear that quote and not think like, wow, what a surprise! You're going to try and add players that are suitable for your team, and maybe it'll be one player, maybe it'll be two players, and it depends on the player. Yes, you can't trade for a player that a team isn't interested in trading for. We know that. So. Will the Jets add? Yes. Do I think the Jets will add on D? I do. Do I think the Jets will add a second line center still? Look, you can love Adam Lowry. Adam Lowry is not a second line center on a Stanley Cup contender. I'm sorry. It's just, I don't know why there's that narrative got
unless he's playing with Ehlers and Iafallo.
No, I still don't. I know. As I know you're kidding, but my point is that, like, I'm sorry, but those same insiders that we were talking about were putting that out there the last couple of weeks, right before, of course, he got injured.
And now all the insiders are saying the Jets are pursuing a 2C.
Yeah, no, but I'm just saying, like, it's just, again, I like, you love what Adam Lowry does. You love the shutdown impact he has. I mean, you saw how different it was playing Colorado. I mean, the Jets did a pretty good job in his absence, but at the same time, he is better at shutting down the best than most of the guys on that team, if not all the guys on that team. So what he brings is significant and is needed, but he doesn't bring enough offense to be a 2C on a Stanley Cup contender. That's the bottom line. So the fact of the matter is that you still needed to pursue a 2C. That's what the Jets, I think, have to look at. They can say, well, you're going to add a winger because you've got lots of center options. Again, I don't see it. Maybe I'm wrong, but I still think that, like, I think ultimately, at the end of the day, Drew, this segment can be summed up as, well, that was a waste of time listening to, because the Jets are going to make an ad. We just don't know specifically where.
I think, guys, the biggest thing to come out, like, if you're a Jets fan, the thing that you like hearing the most from Chevy is that the team's going to be aggressive at the trade deadline, right, Dave? Mm-hmm. And I think everyone expects that. So I think that was something that stood out to me in the interview, is him saying that, right? Like, he wasn't pussyfooting around it and saying, well, we might be active, or, like, obviously there was parts of that where he was saying, well, we might be after a center, but we can't get the right center, so then maybe we'll get a winger, or vice versa. But come on, guys, in a year in which the NHL is completely wide open, you've got Washington as the only team ahead of the Jets right now. Nobody expected that. You've got Columbus in the playoff race, right? Like, I think they're still in a wild card spot. Like, nobody saw that coming. Calgary, who the Jets play tomorrow, nobody expected them to be in a wild card spot. So,
well, I think more importantly, you talk about that as you look at the way the standings are. Whoever finishes atop the Western Conference, which right now is the Winnipeg Jets in the driver's seat there, they get a significantly easier first round matchup than almost anybody else. That's where the appeal is from the Jets' perspective. You remember last year, it was really, there wasn't that weak team in the Western Conference overwhelmingly. This year, whoever's that second wild card spot is not going to be should not be a threat to whoever finishes first overall in the West. That's the big difference there.
I know we were going to go to break right away, but TSN did a great segment on that and just talked about the importance of, for the Jets, or any team really in the Central, to finish first to avoid playing, Colorado or Dallas. I mean, I think if the Jets lined up against Minnesota, I don't think it's as big a deal. And we know, and I misspoke yesterday because Dallas won and Minnesota lost, so Dallas actually jumped ahead. So Dallas is actually in second now with 61 points, and the Wild are in third with 60 for the first time, and that's in a long time that sort of swap has happened.
I see Jamie Thomas is backstage. Rather than going to break, we'll go commercial free for hour number 1 this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jamie's doing his hair. I'm not sure it's going to make much of a difference, but in any event, Jamie Thomas.
It's not going to make a difference because you're handsome regardless.
Thank you so much. Someone has to appreciate this, the amount of effort I put into my hair this morning. So how are you doing, guys?
Well, the fact, did you actually put a lot of effort into the hair this morning? I mean, it looks good. Do you wake up that way?
My wife was in the second bathroom, so I couldn't get in and look in the mirror. So this is the best I can do.
We'll take it, Jamie. That's perfectly acceptable. Good morning to you, good sir.
Morning,
How
guys.
are you? Nice to see you again, of course.
Nice to see you guys as well. Lots of stuff going on, I guess, right?
Yeah, lots of stuff going on. We were we spent the first 30 minutes or so talking about Kevin Cheveldayoff's mid-season availability and some of the comments he made. And we were sort of, the last little bit, and there's more to get into, of course. The last little bit was focused on upgrades and the potential for upgrades and trades. And we saw the, earth-shattering move that the Avs and the Hurricanes made, last night in the midst of the game. So just, I guess, maybe an overarching sort of comment from you, regarding what Kevin Cheveldayoff had to say to the assembled media in Denver earlier this week.
I mean, I give Chevy a lot of credit because I felt he was a lot more forthcoming than he has been in years past. I thought there was lots of things to think about. Very, very curious, especially his comments regarding Jonathan Toews. Although, as Pierre LeBrun pointed out a little bit later this week about his availability isn't necessarily this year; it's about next year. So it's I got excited for a second, and then to hear that Toews wouldn't be available necessarily this year, then you kind of put that in the rearview mirror. I think things we have to be impressed with, and I'm sure Kevin Cheveldayoff is the injuries that have fallen on this team, and then the new line, because Scott Arniel had his set lines for the longest time, and now injuries have forced him to different scenarios. And outside of that game in Utah, the structure that the Jets have put in, the foundation that they've put in, the defensive system they put in, has shown itself time and time again to be excellent. It doesn't matter what the lines look like. We've heard it time and time again about how everybody has to look the same, and that has come to fruition here. Despite whatever lineup that they throw out in the ice, the Jets have defended very well. So I think I don't know if urgency is necessarily there, and I don't think a lot of people look at the move that the Avalanche made last night. The Avalanche do not have a lot of depth, period. So I do, the one thing I do give them credit for is that you recognize that you're not going to be able to re-sign Mikko Rantanen, and you make a move because of it, and you do get some more depth. But what I will say, and I know the Avalanche have a lot of injury problems, I just don't think because what what the Avalanche did last night, Kevin Cheveldayoff has to go out and do a move. I know a lot of people will say that, the Central Division rival has made a big move, you have to do something now. I don't think that's the case. The Avalanche lack in depth, and still, I know they have a lot of injury problems and guys are coming back. I still don't think this move means that Kevin Cheveldayoff has to run out and do something now as well, because the one thing the Jets have, their strength of this organization is depth, period. And it's showing that. So a lot of things that he said when the Jets were on the road, not surprising, but I think there's some comfort in there. He feels comfortable with what the team that he has. In terms of bolstering the lineup, to me still, and I don't think anybody, this isn't breaking news by any stretch of the imagination, I still think you have to get a second center. That is first and foremost. The 8 defensemen that they have right now are doing just fine. Because we all know how expensive defensemen are, and we had Nick Kypreos on the show, and he has a ton of defensemen on his trade board, but he just said the fact that even though there's a lot of defensemen out there theoretically that could be on the move, that doesn't mean the price is going down. So, and even with the second center guys, we all know how expensive that's going to be. So it's just what is out there, what the cost is going to be. But I still think, and it's no surprise to anybody, a second centerman, and this is I would say this over and over again, it's no disrespect to Vladislav Namestnikov. The Ehlers, Namestnikov, Perfetti line is fantastic in games against like Utah or smaller rosters, teams that aren't as physical. It's just the games where they get heavier, where I just don't know if those 3 can be as efficient as they were last night.
Right. And to your point, Jamie, if Vladislav Namestnikov is your 4th line center,
yeah,
and he's playing with Morgan Barron and Rasmus Kupari or whatever the combination is, then you've most likely got one of the best 4th lines in the NHL, right? And that's why I think most people expect Chevy to acquire 2C, because we're in a very similar position that we were in last year when Namestnikov was the second line center, right? Just getting away from Chevy, because Chevy's going to make moves. He's going to make great moves. We're probably not going to expect who he's going to acquire. And I'm not worried about that. He usually pulls off some good moves at the trade deadline. He did last year. Just going back to last night's game, right? Nick Ehlers was a game time decision. I mean, you couldn't have written it any better, right? Like that's
No.
why I thought last night was so fun. It was so much fun to do the post-game show last night because you had Perfetti, who was struggling to score goals. You had Ehlers, who we knew that 500 points was coming. We didn't necessarily know he was going to get 3 and get 500 last night. But then, Ehlers to Perfetti for the hat trick. And it was actually a sneaky, nice little pass by Ehlers on the empty net goal. Obviously, we're not going to spend too much time breaking down the empty net goal, Jamie. But just how nice was that for Perfetti to get a hat trick after, let's be clear. I mean, he's really struggled to score this season.
Yeah, I think talking to people outside of the organization, a lot of people are like, "What do you think of Cole Perfetti? What's going on with Cole Perfetti?" So for him to say what he said yesterday, he wants to do something different outside of his game when he's not scoring. This is what players have to do when they get to the National Hockey. They're not going to score like they did in junior. They're not going to score like they did in the American Hockey League. They have to figure out what they're going to do away from the puck. And I think Cole Perfetti, that's kind of clicking in, and that is what happens when you have a veteran-laden team like the Jets do. You start to realize, okay, I have to do my part when things aren't going well for me. So, but it was picture perfect. And I mean, and we were all having conversations about, okay, Brad Lambert's coming in. How did he fare the last time he was always the fourth line center? Okay, now he's going to be in the second power play. Okay, Cole Perfetti's getting a bump to the top power play. I think that excitement or that interest in what was going to happen, and then for Ehlers to play anyways. And then I was talking with Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet last night. I remember you guys remember the flu game from Michael Jordan in the NBA Finals.
Against Utah also.
Exactly. And Ehlers, Ehlers wasn't on the bench, didn't have a towel over top of his head. He wasn't sweating the whole time because he was so sick. There was nothing dramatic about it. And then Ehlers pointed out last night that he's played a lot worse. Feeling a lot worse than he did last night. So it did not look like Nikolai Ehlers was sick, but so it's kind of interesting. You're sitting there thinking, oh, he's not going to play tonight, so Brad Lambert gets another chance, and then all of a sudden he's got 3 points and it's 500. I think we saw last night Ehlers' vision and the way he can break open a game is very hard to replicate. So you sit there and think about, if you traded him, how do you replace that you just don't? So that's the part, like that the pass that he gave Cole Perfetti on the power play goal was lights out. And then stealing the puck at the Jets blue line and going on the breakaway and just looking back like that. He's so fast. Yeah, it's like the Flash. Like he has so much time. You've seen Flash like knock away bullets and stuff like that. That was like Ehlers looking back to see anybody else coming, like, fine, I'll do it myself. And almost scored like a soccer-like goal where he flips the puck in and goes in on the breakaway. And then the vision to have and realize where Cole Perfetti is, and having the being observant enough to understand what was going on, that Perfetti's looking for the hat trick and you give it to him. That's what a great teammate does. And I don't think we've ever questioned what Nikolai Ehlers is and his commitment to the Winnipeg Jets. It was a perfect night and a perfect response to how poorly they played Monday in Salt Lake City, and then to follow that up with the effort in Denver, and then to come home and play as well as they did offensively and certainly defensively against Utah again on Friday night.
Well, and Jamie, we spent so much time focusing on, with good reason, Cole Perfetti, what he did and what Nikolai Ehlers did. But let me just read you this from our good friend Connor Rabchak. Niederreiter, Kupari, and Appleton on a random Friday night. Shot attempts 22-5. Expected goals 81.23%. Scoring chances 13-4. High danger chances 6-0. So one of the things that I think that you just mentioned and it's interesting is that with Adam Lowry being out, there's opportunity for other guys and not just other guys, but just other line combinations, because the Jets have been using the same ones for so long. And it's one of the things we've talked about is that, the muscle memory, that Connor Scheifele and Velarde is going to be great, but sometimes you have to see them with other players to kind of see, okay, what happens if some guy goes down? You need to have to know what those guys can do with somebody else. Rasmus Kupari is an interesting player. It's a guy we've wondered, what kind of ceiling does he have? What kind of, what can he do with more opportunity? And last year was a frustrating year, obviously, with the injury that put him behind the 8 ball, behind everybody else, took him out of the lineup for a few months. From your perspective, seeing Rasmus Kupari, seeing him get an elevated role now with the Winnipeg Jets, what are you seeing and what did he bring to the game last night, which, as I just illustrated, was pretty significant for his line?
Well, you get all excited when you see Mason Appleton and Niederreiter on the line together, right? Then you're like, okay, oh, there's no Adam Lowry. So you sit there and think, guys, of all the injuries in this team that you can't have, you can't lose Connor Hellebuck. You can't lose Mark Scheifele and you can't lose Josh Morrissey. I almost feel like Adam Lowry's in that department. He's hard to replace. But that being said, there is comfort when you know that Rasmus Kupari and his speed and the ability to get on the forecheck quickly, that gives you, I don't want to say hope, but it almost feels like when you lose somebody that's almost irreplaceable like Adam Lowry, that gives you cause for excitement as well, because Rasmus Kupari was a big mystery last year. You knew what you had. Well, you kind of knew when you saw long stretches with Gabe Vilardi, like, okay, this is what they wanted. You saw how Alex Iafallo can move up and down the lineup last year, so you understand what he is. We didn't know what you had in Rasmus Kupari. All you knew was he's a first-round pick. There's got to be something to this kid. Now we're starting to see it. Now you're starting to see, okay, he can move. He, like a lot of guys in this team, can move up and down the lineup. But to play center on the checking line and to be as dominant as they were yesterday, because let's make no bones about it, Utah does have some skill. Their top line is really good. They cause a lot of problems with their speed and their skill, but they didn't have a sniff whenever that line was out there. And that is the whole purpose of that third line, is to take away the other team's best lines. They did that, and it was almost seamless in some ways. Kupari is maybe not as good as a faceoff guy as Adam Lowry is, but the fact that he's been able to kill penalties this year because he's understanding his speed and his routes and where he has to be, that's a good thing, because speed is something you can't teach, obviously, along with size. I see a lot of positive things with Rasmus Kupari. You just wonder one day, and you're hoping maybe that he can be the team's eventual second line center should that opportunity arise. But in the meantime, you certainly have to go out and get it. But the fact that he played so well and the reuniting of Niederreiter and Appleton, voila, you have something right now, as long as Adam Lowry is out there, as out of the lineup. Now, you're missing size, you're missing grit without Adam Lowry. That's hard to replace. But in the meantime, there's reason and cause for excitement with Rasmus Kupari, because what we've seen in the opportunities that are being presented to him, that he's using that opportunity to put himself in a good spotlight for the coaching staff and certainly for the fan base.
Saturday morning, this is the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Jamie Thomas, Winnipeg Jets team reporter, is our guest on the program. Jamie, we know how lethal the Jets' power play has been this year. The problem as of late, over the last 12 games, is that they just don't get very many opportunities. 16 power play opportunities over the last 12 games. How do you sort of wrap your brain around that, given that this is an NHL where you look at a guy the wrong way, you can often get called for a penalty?
You mean like Patrick Mahomes? No, it's nothing like that. You just wish that breathe on the guy and the flag goes up. That's like,
Jamie, we're gonna get your Bills
powerful
prediction
enemy
in a second
right now.
Yeah, get ready to make your Bills prediction.
Oh my, come on, there's nothing more egregious than what's going on in the NFL right now. Don't even get me started on that stuff.
I agree with
you. That's ridiculous. Anyways, we'll get to that in a second.
Go Bills.
That's for our Jamie. That's for our show at 11 o'clock. A legal procedure. We can't talk about it right now.
That's right.
I just want to see somebody else win the Super Bowl. Am I alone here? I'm not even I'm more of a CFL guy, but I just want to see a different team win.
That's the beauty of a dynasty. You just can't stand it anymore. When the Oilers were winning Stanley Cups, naturally we couldn't. Growing up in Calgary, couldn't stand it anyways. But it's just what's going on in the National Football League is any different when the Patriots were running things as well. So,
true.
I don't know, guys. I think you can tell players you got to go to the net more. You'll draw more penalties. I just don't think it's that simple. I just don't think refs are calling as much. What is that thing? I felt like that was the fifth straight game when the refs "you suck" chant was going at Canada Life Center.
We should mention too, Jamie. I think I heard the stat yesterday. I think penalties across the league are down 9%, 8% or 9%. So.
And that's significant. So we all know in Edmonton the same thing. We've seen what happened with the frustration with Connor McDavid and how that's boiled over. But I think there's a lot of times where Connor McDavid could have a penalty called way more obviously than that. I don't know if you can tell the players, there's nothing you can say to them and say, you have to do this to get more penalties. I just don't think it's going to happen if the league or the referees have decided not to put their whistles away. So what has to happen is what happened last night. You get a Mark Scheifele's out. You're like, oh my gosh, he blocks the shot with his hand, and you're concerned. The top power play goes out, and they score anyways. So that when your opportunities are presented, they have to score, and they have shown that time and time again. When the time comes, when they need a big goal with the man advantage, that's why they are where they are. This is the big difference from last year. The power play was useless last year. His power play has been useless for a long time up until this year. So the fact that they are as deadly as they have been this year is you have to be pleased with. And I don't know what else they can possibly do to get more calls than they're getting right now, because it doesn't seem like that's going to happen if the refs decide otherwise. So just when the opportunity presents itself, you just have to do what they've done, and they've done a great job with it when they've had that.
Jamie, I wanted to ask you about Neil Pionk. Obviously, going back to Wednesday night,
Yes.
one of the biggest shots in Jets 2.0 regulation history. I don't think I'm being going too far in saying that. He's done it twice against the Avalanche, and obviously Pionk is a guy who he admitted, he struggled last year, and obviously the death of a really good friend,
Yes.
had a big part of that. He admitted that it affected him more maybe than he thought it was going to affect him, or it definitely affected him negatively, right? And I think everybody, can relate to that. And
I would hope so, at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And this year though, I'm pretty sure he's still top 10 in defenseman scoring in the NHL. And I look at Samberg and Pionk, including last night. Like when Samberg and Pionk are together, obviously when Samberg was out, the Jets struggled on the PK, and Hayden Fleury didn't necessarily grab that second pairing left side job. But just what are your overall kind of thoughts on Pionk? Because to me, he's arguably playing the best hockey as a Jet that he's ever played, maybe with the exception of that first year that he came here.
Yeah, I think so too. And going back to the death of his friend, I think that shows the human side of players and athletes, and we can't forget about it, and should never ever forget about. So, and the fact that he's been so forthcoming about it says a lot about Neil Pionk too. I think at the beginning part of this year, I thought if anybody was going to have a bounce back year, it would have been Neil Pionk. Did I expect him to be top 10 in defenseman scoring this year? No. And he's done it quietly. I think because Josh Morrissey commands so much attention. You got the Four Nations face-off berth that Morrissey has, so that's going to take away attention from what Pionk is doing. He's had a great year, and I think the fact that obviously having a child, have a daughter, plays a big role in the player bump, I guess, in some ways. You knew with the time that he had spent with Samberg in the offseason that something was coming, and I think another thing too was Dylan Samberg deserves a lot of credit. We think of the error he made in that first round series against Vegas. He was just distraught about it, and the fact that he's recovered from that to become the player that he is today said a lot about his abilities and his mental strength too. So they become a great pairing. But Neil Pionk is just everything that we saw when he first got here. He's getting in guys' faces. He's frustrating players. He always got that big smile on his face when we've all played against those types of guys. It sucks when there's nothing you can do to frustrate them, but they just have to smile at you. That's all Neil Pionk does, because he just gets underneath your skin so quickly. But the defensive side of his game, power play points that he's getting, he's been fantastic. And the fact that the Jets have two solid, they have a solid top four. Let's be no bones about it. You can talk about the third pairing all you want, but those top two pairings are the most important. And they seem to have that right now. And Neil Pionk's a big reason for that. And certainly the growth of Dylan Samberg plays a large role in Pionk's success as well.
Well, so Jamie, along those lines, sort of, career years or terrific seasons so far for Pionk and Nikolai Ehlers, both of whom are pending unrestricted free agents. How does that, you think, sort of change the assessment or factor into the evaluation with a rising salary cap of both of those players' futures as members of the Winnipeg Jets? Not so much vis-a-vis the trade deadline, because I don't think that's, I know that, Colorado just traded the UFA, but I think that's not going to happen in this situation. But,
not
how does
million.
that
It wasn't asking for $14 million, so it makes it like that's probably what Pionk and Ehlers will make together combined in a perfect scenario.
Well, but Jamie, if Rantanen wants $14 million, then you have to redo the McKinnon contract and give him $18 million. You know what I mean?
There's that. That's the problem, and then this is everybody would love to have this problem. Is when you have elite players like that, you're going to have to eventually pay them as such. So to have Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, I'm sorry, we've all seen how the Toronto Maple Leafs plan does not work. You cannot give everybody money. That's just not how. And as Chevy said, it's not fantasy hockey. So it's just that everyone should look at the Maple Leafs and go, okay, well, that can't happen to us. And as much as it must suck to have to trade somebody as great as Mikko Rantanen, that's the reality check that you have in a salary cap world. You just can't load it up like that.
But I sort of take a different perspective, and we'll get back to my question there for a second, though. With the cap rising rapidly,
Yes.
Look at the contract not as the dollar figure, but as
Right.
almost the percentage of the cap. When it was signed, then I think it's a little bit more comparable that, McKinnon obviously should be getting paid more than Rantanen in actual dollars. But he
Yes.
signed a very lucrative contract based on the
At
percentage
the time.
of the salary cap at the time. So if you want to, I mean, again, Colorado made the decision they made for whatever reason that, it's their choice and everything else. To me, though, with the cap rising, $14 million for Mikko Rantanen, and then $16 million for Cale Makar a couple of years after that.
Yeah.
Well, if the cap keeps going up to 95, 105, 115, it's not as intolerable as it seems strictly looking at the actual AAV number.
Yeah, I think another thing that plays a role into this too is what's the next Canadian television contract going to look like? That for hockey related revenue too. So
Lower.
Yes, I don't think that's going to be as lucrative as it was in that aspect too, and whatever it looks like. But so to me, it puts you in a tough spot. And I know you look at it and go, okay, you can make room because of what Rantanen is worth to your organization. But I think we go back to the bigger problem is I think Colorado recognized, and when Makar, Rantanen, and McKinnon can't score or do everything like they have, you can't win. Like Casey Middlestat was like, how many times you guys, the 4 games this year, I did not recognize Casey Middlestat. Casey Middlestat has been invisible. Jonathan Drouin, invisible. So that's the thing. Like nobody else has stepped up. And I know they have a lot of injuries and we can go down the list, but so have the Jets. People have found a way to score. So I think the bigger problem for Colorado is they had to find depth some way. And it's such a huge move. And it's hard to comprehend, but they're getting Martin Necas is not, I think he's a pretty good player, man.
Yeah.
They're not getting a shrub in that one. And Jack Drury's always kind of been a good player as well, but Colorado do what they have to do. But I just think the bigger question is how you're going to get better and how you're going to get deeper. Because Winnipeg has shown time and time again that depth does work. And I know we can look back to last year's playoffs, but that was just a bad week for the Jets, flat out, guys. Like nothing worked for 5 games or for 4 games. And I don't think that would happen again should those two meet. I don't think the Jets should be as scared to play the Avalanche this year as it looked like they were last year. I think there's a little more understanding what has to be done when you play the Avalanche, the more sacrificing that has to be done, not to rely on Connor Hellebuyck as much. There's some valuable lessons learned from that series, which is what you're hoping for, that they've learned in years past, the things you can't do in the Stanley Cup playoffs. And I feel like, and I hate to use a Toronto term, this year's different. So that's what you're hoping for.
Jamie, the one player we haven't even mentioned, and and look, he didn't have a significant game yesterday, so it's understandable. Connor Hellebuyck though did get to 30 wins. The next closest goaltender has 24 in the NHL. He has 30 wins. And Elliot Friedman was on the 32 Thoughts podcast yesterday, and he was talking about speaking of UFA and RFAs, and he said, I'm just going to quote him here, the way Hellebuyck is playing has convinced these guys that they can win, that they have a chance to win there with him in the net. And he just talked about how impactful the signing of Connor Hellebuyck has been, and the reverberations, if you will, because it allows other guys to be like, he's a future Hall of Fame goaltender. He's a guy who's in his prime. He's winning Vezinas. He's in the Hart conversation. You can win a Stanley Cup with him. I know folks have questions based on the playoff performance, but that's a collective playoff performance.
It has to be. Not just. I'm glad you're saying that because it has to be. Yeah.
I mean, again, we're used to in this market watching him save the Jets bacon when they've fallen, but the reality is it's not often that they're saving his bacon, and they weren't unable. It was a collective failure. It wasn't on him alone. But the fact of the matter is they obviously feel that they can get to that next level with him. And we've seen it obviously when they went to the Western Conference Finals in 17-18. But just from what you're seeing again, you're around the team every day. Are you seeing anything different from this guy? Because to me, it's just remarkable that a guy who's won Vezinas, 2 of them, of course, has made that look like nothing, because it just seems like he's just elevated and just mentally he's just where he needs to be this year. And it just, again, I'm around him a lot too. It just seems different than what we've seen in the past.
Yeah. Do you remember what he said at the end of his media availability last year? It was like he's going to have to trust his teammates a lot more. Like he's going to have to allow them to help more. And I'm paraphrasing what he's saying.
Yeah.
But I think there's it's a 2-way street here, Dave. It's just like they believe in him, and he's starting to believe in them, or does believe in that they're going to do the right things to take away those prime scoring opportunities. And we've seen that this year. But I'm with you. There's another level that he's got to, and Jamie McLennan said this to us about a week ago. It's just like, it's all, as you get older, it's mental. You understand what you have to do. And then how many times have we heard this? And I'm sure you guys have dealt with this as time goes by. People outside this market constantly asking, are they playing him too much? And now you, the three of us, anybody else that covers this team, now because this is ridiculous. Because Wade Flaherty said, I asked him once about overplaying Connor Hellebuyck. He says, does he look tired to you? And I'm like, nope. He goes, exactly. So I think Wade Flaherty has a good understanding of how much they can lean on this guy more than people outside the market. All they see is the numbers. Right? And it's the same as when I covered the Flames. Every year, Mika Kiprusoff is going to play, and dude was playing 70 games at that time, and he did not look tired. So Grant Fuhr played 76 games one year when he was in St. Louis. So these guys understand what they have to do, and so do the people that coach them, and so do the guys that take care of their food and everything. It's just like there's too much sports science out there that we shouldn't even. And there's guys playing their 42. Like we can go down the list of all the things that are happening to these guys. Look at Novak Djokovic.
He had to retire their bodies. Finals, though.
Yeah, I know.
Bad example, Jamie. Bad example.
Yeah. I got a better one.
His body fell apart in the championship. Jamie.
What about Jaromir Jagr? He's going to play hockey until he's 75.
But Dave, sorry to this point, Jamie. Dave, read off the stat last night on the post-game show. What is it? However many games in a row now, Dave, where the Jets have held the opposition.
Well, that was from the game notes. I think it was like 13 straight games, which set a franchise record for 30 shots or less by the Jets. Which I guess is
shots against is what you're saying.
Yeah, shots against, which is again why I said limited shots against. So the point is that it's that's part of, I think, Jamie, what you're saying in terms of the team is doing their part to reduce the wear and tear, because for many years there were two goaltenders who faced more shots and they played more than anybody else, Connor Hellebuyck and John Gibson.
Yeah. And remember when Adam Lowry said that he was asked about Hellebuyck about his performance this year. I think we all know when there was the mass exodus in the blue line from the Jets, starting with Dustin Byfuglien, that was Connor Hellebuck's finest work. His first Vezina was his best work, period. Like I can't even remember half the guys who played in the blue line after Buff and Tyler Myers. It escapes me totally of all the patchwork that they had to do and the work that Connor Hellebuyck had to do. But he does deserve the Hart Trophy right now. Like if his season ends right now, period. He's just guys. Morgan Barron saying after he won his 300th game, I hear guys on the ice saying, "What do I have to do to beat this guy?" There's frustration everywhere, and the best example of what the Jets don't give up anymore. We saw a whole bunch of it in the playoffs against Colorado last year. That goal by Barrett Hayton last night. There's not that guy coming right down the middle with everybody pushed back. There wasn't anybody high on that goal to defend. That doesn't happen very often. And Barrett Hayton was allowed to walk right in the slot and go high on blocker side on Connor Hellebuyck. That play, they don't give that play up very often at all because of the way they've been playing defensively. So, but still, the way he's playing, the stats are all there. How dominant of a season this is. And, we can sit there and goaltenders don't play every game. Well, Connor Hellebuyck is essentially playing every game. That's what it feels like because the way the schedule is shooken out, there's not many back-to-backs. So the numbers that he's putting up, the fact that he's at 30 wins, there's nobody else close to him in that department. And the fact his goals against average where it is and the save percentage and the high danger stops that he's making, he is the Hart Trophy guy right now. I'm sorry. You can say what you want about Nathan McKinnon, but the Jets aren't where they are with the confidence they have in their system without the guy that's stopping the puck.
Like Jamie, maybe if Leon had 100 points now, maybe you get the Hart. But I mean, Leon could start to pick it up a little bit.
Yeah, he's slacking a little bit, really. He probably should be scoring 5 points a game without Connor McDavid in the lineup. This is when you grab the Hart Trophy. The 3 games you play without Connor McDavid, that's where you get it. But I just think,
was 3 games too much? By the way, Jamie, it was too much. It was too much.
I think it was too much. I just think and we go down the list about this one too. Like if a guy's crawling all over you, stretching his legs, I can go down. Like guys have to defend themselves. Mario I love how the videos are popping up on the internet. Mario snapping, Mario Lemieux, of anybody in the NHL, played in the worst era of hockey. Absolutely. Where guys could just hang on to you, cross-check you. That's why we don't appreciate Mario Lemieux enough, because if the rules were the way they are right now, and I love going on tangents on these things, is he would have 200 points a year for sure. because of all the crap that, and I love how Chris Pronger weighed in on that one. Like this, because the game is in a good place, we're not seeing the headshots anymore. I think it's not as tough as it used to be. And I like people, the elite players should stick up for themselves because there's not Bob Probert out there anymore to defend you. So yeah, one game should have been more enough. And I'm also, as a guy in this industry, I'm totally embarrassed with the way the Vancouver and Edmonton media are going to go back and forth about this one.
Wow! Oh my God!
It's so hard to watch.
Like, guys, move on. Like
it's so hard to watch, and I love all those guys, but we're supposed to be, we invest ourselves in the Jets, but we shouldn't be defending them to the point where we're like having full debates on when this should happen, the apologies, and yeah, I know. It's been really hard to watch. Two great markets. Dan Murphy, very funny about how he said he's gonna I think cross-check Gene Principe in the face when he goes in. The first time was one of the best things I've seen in a while because we know how nice Gene Principe is, but it's just like, yeah, it's been hard to watch.
Okay, so Jamie, Mitchell's having us over for brisket later tonight. What time should we be over for lunch?
How about 1:30?
Okay. Is that when you're leaving the house? Yeah. Is that what's happening at that point in time? Coincides?
Well, there is practice, but I'll see you guys afterwards.
There you go.
Tell you what, I'll buy you guys Subway. Is that a sponsor for the show? Or is that something?
No.
They could be.
No. Yeah.
They could be for the right price.
Subway, are you listening? Anybody?
Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Jamie Thomas.
Play now. Talk to you soon.
Thank you. Winnipeg Jets team reporter. Go have breakfast with your family. We'll catch up soon, Jamie. Thanks, buddy.
See you guys.
There you go. Jamie Thomas joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. That was a lot of fun, as it always is when we get together with Mr. Thomas. Commercial free for the first hour. We promised it. We delivered it. Commercial time now. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Smash the like button while we head to break. When we come back, more Jets talk, and then Pat Steinberg on the Flames at the bottom of the hour. Don't go anywhere. It's presented by Play Now.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Dining, entertainment, parking, and convenience, all in one spot. City Place is located in the heart of downtown Winnipeg, attached to the Canada Life Centre. Whether you're working, living, or out for a night in the downtown, make City Place your go-to destination before or after the fun finds you. Lunchtime, game time, anytime, visit City Place at 333 St. Mary Avenue, next to Canada Life Centre. Holt Dental, the new official dentist of Illegal Curve, has a philosophy rooted in two unyielding principles: genuinely caring about patients and providing outstanding service. Being a patient of Holt Dental means more than just checkups and treatments. It's taking the time to listen and talk to each patient so they can achieve the best long-term health, functionality, and aesthetics for their teeth, mouth, and gums. Conveniently located at Grant Park Festival on Taylor Avenue, Holt Dental is dentistry of the highest quality in a comfortable and relaxed environment. For more information, visit holtdental.ca. Oh, and there's plenty of free parking at the front door, too. Celebrating its 40th year as Winnipeg's home for stand-up comedy, Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club has recently been named Canada's top comedy club and a top 5 comedy club in North America. From birthday parties to date nights to fundraisers and everything in between, Rumors is your destination for the best and most affordable live entertainment Winnipeg has to offer. For more information on upcoming shows, Rumors' incredible promotions, and to purchase tickets, visit rumorscomedyclub.com.
This January at Boston Pizza, every day is Pasta Tuesday. That means BP's famous pastas start at just $11.99 every single day. Create your own or go gourmet for just a few bucks more. Come on in for Pasta Tuesday pricing any day. Only this January at Boston Pizza.
Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, Saturday morning, hour number 2 of the program. Drew Mandel, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg with you. The Illegal Curve Hockey Show is presented by our friends at Play Now. Don't bet on illegal sites. Bet with Play Now instead. Manitoba's local, legal, and secure gambling site, 18 plus. Enjoy responsibly. Always great to say thank you to our friends at Play Now for their continued support of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Reminder, tomorrow night, 7:30 p.m., 7:40 p.m., right around there, it's going to be the Illegal Curve post-game show. Yours truly, Dave Minuk, with you, talking about the Jets and the Calgary Flames. Then the Jets head out east to Montreal on Tuesday to face the Habs, Thursday to face the Bruins before returning home for 3 games in a row to wrap up the pre-Four Nations Cup portion of the schedule. So it's rapidly approaching. We're over game 50, as we'll be at game 51 Sunday, and then Four Nations Cup, and then trade deadline, and then playoff stretch drive, then playoffs, then summer. Quickly will be rapidly approaching here in Winnipeg. Amazing how quickly time flies. Continuing on as we sort of recap Kevin Cheveldayoff's media availability from earlier this week. We've talked about the possibilities of trades. We've talked about Logan Stanley. We've talked about what about the pending unrestricted free agents? I mentioned that to Jamie Thomas in his in that interview. We know the salary cap is going up. We know it's going up, relatively steeply over the next couple of years based on hockey-related revenues, although the Four Nations Cup probably isn't going to be contributing as much to that HRR as they had initially hoped with the lackluster ticket sales.
Apparently ticket sales just went on sale in Boston, someone said yesterday.
Like they haven't been on sale so far?
No, meaning like they dropped the price of the tickets because the tickets weren't moving, so.
Okay, well, there you go. I mean, that
like Dave,
that
what you meant
sense.
to say, the tickets that were for sale went on sale.
Yes.
Yeah, I got you.
They've discounted is what you're saying. They've discounted the tickets that had already
It'd be pretty
been
funny
on
if they
sale.
just went on sale.
I'm pretty sure isn't that what on sale means?
Well, no. I mean, on sale in the initial context was they're now available. On sale in the context that they're
Nuance,
less
Drew.
expensive.
Nuance.
Well, I mean, look.
It's funny when you go to the store and you say, "Is it on sale?" I don't think. Did you just put this out for sale, or is
Drew's
this...
anti-semantic?
Anyways, what about sort of Kevin Cheveldayoff and his comments about the unrestricted free agents? I've had conversations with them, but I wouldn't categorize them as negotiations. Is how Kevin Cheveldayoff addressed or referred to the general.
So I have a
state of
question
affairs.
though. Why bring that up? If you've had conversations with them, but they're not negotiations, then.
I mean, does that mean he called and said, "Hey, it's Chevy. I'm calling to say hello, just so I can say I had a conversation. Goodbye."
And then speaking specifically about Nikolai Ehlers, he's probably the most prominent of the unrestricted free agents. Nikolai is someone that obviously when you watch them grow up, they do kind of become like your kids, so to speak. It's great to see the career that he's had and having, Cheveldayoff said. At the end of the day, there's nothing more that I'd love to do than raise a cup with him. The business side will be the business side. Where that goes, that story's still unfolding. And then I believe, Dave, if I'm not mistaken, Elliot Friedman, you mentioned on 32 Thoughts, sort of was talking about how he expects the Jets to maybe look at things regarding the free agents during the Four Nations Cup break.
Because the cap announcement is expected just before that.
That's right. The NHL will announce next year's salary cap number, which will then give the Jets a little bit of a frame of reference to see if they can bring all, whomever of the players back, so that they know sort of what the landscape that they'll be dealing with is fully known at that point in time.
Yeah, and boys, I heard that actually when Gary Bettman makes that announcement, he's going to come out to Shane McMahon's intro music to announce the salary cap going up. Money, 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 if anybody knows what I'm talking about. But Drew, listen, first off, I don't think Chevy said much there. Am I wrong in saying that? I mean, we didn't really learn much. Chevy's comments didn't really provide any insight whatsoever in terms of which guys are going to be signed and which guys aren't going to be signed.
I generally agree with you, but his quote about Nikolai Ehlers, to me, and maybe I'm just reading way too
what else
much
is
into
what
it.
else is he going to say? We can't sign Nikolai Ehlers?
No, of course he's not. But to me, I probably
what are you getting out of it?
I'm reading into it that he's sort of prepared that they're not good, that the Nikolai Ehlers is going to move on at the end of the season. That's sort of, now maybe I'm just looking at it through whatever lens, and for whatever reason, that's the perception I'm getting. But just reading that quote, to me,
he really wants to hoist a cup as if like this is their last chance. Is that what you're saying?
Sort of getting that feeling.
I can see that.
Now that can very well change as Elliot
Last dance.
with one phone call, things can change. But to me, and this is not, we now have precedent of the Jets saying to a key member of the team, thank you for your service, we're not going to be able to bring you back. We saw it last year with Brendan Dillon. Now, you would say Dylan Sandberg was ready to step up. I'm not sure if necessarily Brad Lambert is ready to step up and be Nikolai Ehlers 2.0, but there is historical precedence of the Jets just letting a pending UFA walk away. I don't know. To me, there's something in that quote that tells me they're not expecting to find common ground with Nikolai Ehlers.
You know what it tells me, Ezzy? It tells me that Drew does not wear rose-colored glasses, that's for sure. But I think that...
I'm going to go look for a new pair of glasses later on today, though.
Okay, fair enough. But
I really like your glasses, Drew. I don't think you have any need to get new ones.
Sometimes you want to refresh things. I'm not going to be able to regrow hair, so I'm going to do something else, with regard to changing my face, if you will.
If anything, what you should do is get those like Bono, get those like purple type of glasses.
Yeah,
I think that would be a good look.
Yeah,
fun fact: Drew and I once went to a U2 concert together at the old Winnipeg Stadium. That's a fun fact.
We paid like $40 a ticket or something. It was
yeah,
really...
whatever we did. It was good times.
I didn't know any. I
didn't know any of the songs.
With you guys.
I don't even think Dave and I were that friendly at that point in time.
We were definitely not, and I guarantee you that I was like 19th on Drew's call list by that point. And I remember going like, I don't even like U2, but sure, I'll go. Why not?
Yeah.
Anyways, no, I actually, Drew, I'm leaning towards your way of thinking on this one as well. And look, Kevin Cheveldayoff can use we don't want to upset the apple cart and have, we've got 7 UFAs or whatever the number is, and we don't want to sign one and then leave 6 others wondering why they haven't been signed, which is what he said last year with Dylan DeMello and Brendan Dillon. And of course, as we know, Dylan DeMello, who said to Elliot Friedman that all he wanted to do was sign in Winnipeg and be here. I mean, that's the other thing, right? With it really dispels this notion that, guys don't want to be here. Because again, it's easy to say, oh, Winnipeg's on my no trade. If you've never been here, if you've never spent time here. But I mean, again, one of the things that I don't want to go off too far on a tangent, but I do think it's important to talk about. Like, I've been talking to the Moose guys. They all went ice fishing on Monday as a team. They did like a team activity up on Lake Winnipeg. And some guys, which is crazy to think, like Jared Anderson Dolan had never really gone fishing, never gone ice fishing before. I caught a 28-inch walleye. So he was the big winner of the day on Monday. But my point is that when you get to experience some of the things that you can do here, it's not the nightlife. I'm not going to pretend it's LA. It's not Florida. You're not golfing, although they got snow the other day, but you're not golfing in January. There's obviously limitations.
Actually, we have plenty of golf simulators in Manitoba.
Yeah, simulators. Good point, Az. But I'm just saying that I just think, but it's one of those things that is it's worth noting. But I just think in this situation, if Ehlers and the Jets were going to come to terms, then it would have been done already. I'm with Brent on that one. The only thing I would say that would be my kind of one hesitation, which we'll have to wait and see a few more weeks, is when the camp announcement gets made.
Is that Ehlers doesn't like ice fishing.
Well, he doesn't like the cold. We know that much, which is why Winnipeg's such a strange market for him. But I just think...
I'm pretty sure it gets pretty cold in Denmark, Dave.
Well,
are you surprised, this is on the side, are you surprised that Lars Eller hasn't reached 500 points in his career?
Well, he's more of a third line guy. Like,
he's been playing for so long.
Yeah, he's got to be 33 years old, 34 years old.
I think he's played some. I would have, when they said that, that Ehlers is the first Danish-born player to reach 500 points, I was sort of surprised that Lars Eller hadn't been there. I think I checked it last night, and Eller's at about 420 or something. But
I think we have to start calling Ehlers the Danish Gretzky.
Anyways, I think it's a very interesting thought exercise, but I would suspect that if the new cap number comes out, and Drew, by the way, I'm 100% on board with what your comment was to Jamie, because this idea that you can't make more than player X when a salary cap goes up is
apples
insane.
And oranges.
It has to be the percentage of what your contract is relative to, otherwise, like, what are we even talking about? So you're telling me that because Mark Scheifele is signed a contract in 2024, that's worth this, that a guy in, because that he's got that contract for 8 more years, nobody else can sign a contract that's worth more than Mark Scheifele. Kyle Connor might have something to say about that if you want to get him to another long-term deal. So I 100% agree with you. I just think that if the Jets and Ehlers are going to come to terms, it will be when we hear what the new cap is, and you can kind of get a sense as to how much money is going to be available. And if they're not, then will the Jets, I don't know if the Jets would be so bold as to try and, trade Ehlers, who we saw yesterday is so dynamic and so important. But if you're going to lose him for nothing, and you can, if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff and you can kick it down the can, with what the Avs did, because they got Natchez and he's got another year on his deal. Are you going to be willing to entertain something like that? If you can get an apple to an apple with an extra year, I mean, it's going to be hard, but if you could do something like that, would you do that if you know Ehlers isn't re-signing for, after this season?
Yeah. So hold on, Drew. The formula is present value equals future value divided by 1 plus the rate of interest. That'll give us Mikko Rantanen's next contract. And I think it's going to be,
what the hell did he just say, Dave?
I have no idea. I think he went.
Yeah, I took corporate finance for I think 2 or 3 weeks. I almost got to a month taking corporate finance, so I remember the time value of money. But like to Dave's point, I mean, Ehlers is going to get paid.
What the hell did he just say?
I'm pretty well. Davis Payne. I don't know if you guys listened to that.
The economics lesson.
He went economics and top up, bottom down, and obviously as he listened to that, realized I need to know more about economics. He's been in an economics class for the last few months trying to get up to date. So he's looking tip
Actually,
top.
that was my best subject. I did very well in microeconomics and macroeconomics at the University of Winnipeg. As far as my science courses, that's a whole different story. I got a D in atmospheric science in my first year. I had absolutely no idea what was going on. And also it was first thing in the morning, Tuesday morning. So I fell asleep a lot. Apologies to my professor at the University of Winnipeg. But I ended up doing okay at U of W. But I think the point we're trying to make here, guys, is, I mean, if you want to have Nikolai Ehlers in your organization long-term, then you're going to sign him, period. Right. And I don't think
and the segment is over. Thank you.
No, but I'm saying, Dave, I don't read too much into Chevy's comments because, we had the comment up there from our good friend, Brent Bellamy. Like, I understand why some people think that if Ehlers was going to sign, he would have already. But we don't know that because we didn't think Scheifele and Hellebuck were going to necessarily sign those contracts at the same time. So again, it's kind of, to me, guys, nothing has really changed that much. We just don't know. There's a lot of uncertainty with Ehlers. Could he be traded? I doubt he's going to be traded. Could he leave the Jets as a UFA after? Well, the Jets have never had a player like him leave as a UFA. That just doesn't happen. So, I mean, maybe he does. Maybe it depends on how far the Jets go in the playoffs. We just don't know. There's just too much uncertainty. And Drew, getting back to the other restricted free agents and UFAs, like obviously Gabe Vilardi and Neil Pionk are the big ones. Gabe Vilardi is going to sign. I mean, I don't see any reason why.
He's an RFA.
He's an RFA.
Well, no, I mentioned that. I said RFAs.
No, I know. But I'm saying so they'll get him done.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So I'm saying that Gabe Vilardi is obviously going to be signed, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's long term. Neil Pionk. I mean, again, he's having a great year, but he's going to get paid, right? Like, what's his salary going to be? So I'm just saying that there's a lot of uncertainty, and I don't think that Chevy's comments have done anything to dispel that.
Speaking of RFAs, Dylan Samberg, of course, is an RFA, and the Jets, I'm sure, will be looking to get him.
Well, same thing with Samberg. Like, I see him at least a 5-year deal for him.
Right, and we've talked about that. He changed agents this week, so I just want to make mention. This is what Elliot Friedman had to say about that. So Samberg earlier this week announced he changed his representation. He's now represented by the same agent that represents Neil Pionk. I don't know if that means anything or not, but again, just information, food for thought for everybody. This is what Elliot Friedman had to say, quote, "Whenever I hear that a player is changing their agent right before a contract negotiation, I'm like, oh man, that's not good. That's not good. But even I heard in this particular case, it's nothing like that. It's not because he's unhappy. He's in a good place." So that's what Elliot Friedman, in case anybody was concerned by that change, Elliot Friedman quickly.
Where'd you get that quote, Drew?
I got that quote on your number one resource for anything to do with the Winnipeg Jets. Winnipeg Sports Talk. No, I'm joking. IllegalCurve.com is where that quote is. You can listen to that whole episode of 32 Thoughts where they spent some time talking about the Jets. That's available on IllegalCurve.com. So just wanted to make mention, of course, about that Samberg part. Look, the Jets are in a very good place. We know that. The questions will be what happens at the trade deadline, when do moves happen, things of that nature. But for a Jets team that just lost their captain for the next number of weeks, I do think it says a lot about them. And we talked about this, I think, on Wednesday's post-game show when we were live at Boston Pizza, that they go into Colorado and they defeat a division rival, a Colorado Avalanche team that really got punked by the Jets, about, I guess it was maybe 2 weeks ago or so now, maybe 10 days ago. You thought that Colorado would really be hungry, and how are the Jets going to respond to their poor performance on Monday? How are the Jets going to respond to the loss of their captain? Well, the Jets respond with an overtime victory in Denver. Then last night they come out and they stay within themselves. It's not a picture-perfect game, but it's an effective victory against the Utah Hockey Club, a team that had beaten them on Monday. And now, of course, on Sunday, you have the Calgary Flames, where 6 days ago, the Flames defeated the Winnipeg Jets on home ice. Calgary, by the way, it's going to be the second half of a back-to-back for them. They play in Minnesota tonight, so you know that the Jets going to see that as an opportunity for them to get further revenge against the Flames team that the Jets really controlled that game, just everything but on the scoreboard, largely because of the Jets, by contractual law, are not allowed to score more than 2 goals when Eric Comrie is in net for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And Dustin Wolf made 38 saves that game. I did the post-game show with Connor Harabchuk. You two guys were obviously too good to do the post-game show that night. Obviously, Drew was at the game, and Dave M had his very bustling social life to attend to. But I think there were 85 shot attempts for the Jets in that game, which was a season high. I remember Connor bringing that up, right? So, yes, the Jets deserved at least a point, if not 2, the last time these two teams played. And like you said, Drew, they're going to be in the second game of back-to-back. But that Flames team, guys, obviously you can't take them lightly. They've been one of the nicer surprises in the NHL this season, I would say. But, kind of going back to, Chevy's presser and all this talk about, all the moves that the Jets could make. We talked about this last week, guys, right? Like that idea that there was going to be we obviously didn't know it was going to be Mikko Rantanen. I mean, Chris Johnston mentioned this in his piece. Like, apparently Rantanen himself was shocked that he was traded, right? But what we were talking about was, could a team make a significant move prior to the Four Nations face-off, right? Because we talked about there's no roster freeze, but we talked about, that idea that, some teams were going to make some moves maybe a little bit earlier than in previous years. Because you remember, guys, it was a couple of weeks before the trade deadline last year when things really started to heat up, or around there. I don't know exactly where it was, 2 or 3 weeks. When did the Jets acquire Sean Monahan? Basically,
around the All-Star break.
Yeah, so that's really when things started to
that was a month or so ahead of the trade deadline.
Right. So now this is just a couple weeks earlier where things are starting to go. And guys, there's still now. Well, JT Miller and Elias Pettersson, you have to think something's going to budge there in the next week, right? Like how far? And you hear Carolina was interested in maybe both of those guys, and then they turned their attention to Rantanen. So all I'm saying is that don't be surprised if Chevy pulls the trigger a little bit earlier than maybe some people anticipated. That's all I'm saying.
I agree with you, Ezzy. I think that it could happen very soon. You talk about, sometimes you wait too long. Patrick Allvin in Vancouver, he was the general manager there, has waited. I mean, the Canucks lose 6-2 to the Oilers on Thursday night. That team looks awful. They look like they hate each other. And you're just sitting there, trying to extract whatever, and now you lose out because eventually the Hurricanes called your bluff and they went another direction. Now any leverage you had where maybe you were pitting the Hurricanes and the Rangers against one another for JT Miller's services, well, one less buyer is on the table. And so now, if you're Allvin, you've lost a ton of your leverage in trying to make this JT Miller trade. He badly overplayed his hand, and now the Canucks are not going anywhere. They have players who hate each other, and and the only thing that they can do is their media is fighting with another team's media. That's the most fight Vancouver has shown in the last 3 months.
The only thing I would say,
sorry, Dave, I think the Devils make a lot of sense for JT Miller, but continue on.
No, the only thing I was going to say is, but I understand that it appears to be imploding in Vancouver, but you also have both those guys signed for 3 years after this one. So it's not as if, again, I'm not saying that you keep a toxic room. We saw what toxicity can do to a dressing room. So you don't want that in your organization for sure. But you also don't, again, he doesn't in theory have to do anything because it's not like one of them is going to be a UFA this year. So I'm just saying that he's got some more time to kind of maybe try and smooth this over. I mean, it's a shocking concept to hear that you hear from the GM in Vancouver, at least. Sounds like they hear from him about once every few weeks, because he does a lot of media. But I think, like I said, like as he said, there's really an opportunity here at any time for these teams to be making, some sort of move, because the benefit of it is more that you get a guy into the organization earlier, you get ahead of everybody else, so you're not like fighting for everybody for the scraps. But in addition to that, you're also trying to ensure that, like we saw with Sean Monahan, when they acquired him, he was able to acclimatize to the group and get used to the group. And of course, get that natural hat trick, which is the fastest natural hat trick in Jets 2.0 history with against his former club, the Calgary Flames. But I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing, especially with, the Lowry injury. I don't think you need to, let's put it this way though. I'm not saying you do a trade because of the Lowry injury. I just think you're doing a trade because you're trying to augment that position. Because remember, in my mind, I think in your minds, the Lowry position is that 3C. You're trying to fill the 2C role, and then have Vlad Mestikov, move back down to your 4C role.
And just wanted to mention one thing, guys. Elliot Friedman reported this about the Rantanen trade, was that part of it was that Sebastian Aho and Mikko Rantanen are really good friends, right, and they're going to play together at the Four Nations face-off. So that just kind of further backs up your point, Dave, to get players together, right? Like that's something that was factored in. The Four Nations face-off isn't the reason why that trade was made, but they factored that in, right? Like these guys are going to get some extra time together at the Four Nations tournament, right? Mm-hmm. So again, we don't know that a trade's going to happen in the next week or next 2 weeks, but all we're saying is based on the fact that Colorado and Carolina and Chicago, to a lesser degree, got the they kicked it off. Like it's trade season officially now.
Yeah, well, it's about time.
If you remember, just Drew quickly, but if you remember last year, right? Vancouver made the big trade, and then which the Jets were in on, and then of course Winnipeg made the next big trade. So I mean, like you said, as it's been kicked off, so we'll see how soon it is before the next deal is done.
Time will tell on that front. We'll bring you all the latest here, of course, on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, on the Illegal Curve Post-Game Show, and of course, on illegalcurve.com. When we return, Pat Steinberg from Sportsnet Radio in Calgary, set to join us, talk a little bit about the Flames, the Winnipeg Jets opponent tomorrow night. Don't go anywhere. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. It's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. It's presented by Play Now. We are live on a Saturday morning.
We want to thank you for not betting with Play Now and choosing our illegal gambling site instead.
Because we couldn't afford things like this without your money.
So much of your money.
Now you might have questions like,
Do our profits benefit your community?
No.
Or bet with Play Now, Manitoba's local legal and secure gambling site.
Bottom of hour number 2. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Drew Mindell, Dave Minuk, Ezra Ginsburg. Just a quick bit of news from the Winnipeg Jets. They have returned Brad Lambert back to the Manitoba Moose. So the official terminology is that they have loaned Brad Lambert back to the Moose. So that is ahead. Of course, the Moose play this afternoon, the Jets and the Flames tomorrow. So it sounds like it was just a precautionary issue. Of course, we knew that Nikolai Ehlers was under the weather, and Lambert is back with the Moose ahead of tonight, their game this afternoon. We are pleased to welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, Pat Steinberg from the Fan 960, Sportsnet 960 in Calgary, to talk about the Flames. Pat, good morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
No problem, boy. Good, boys. How are you doing?
We're doing fine and dandy. Love talking hockey on a Saturday morning. Another rematch between the Jets and the Flames after last Saturday. So these two teams, second time in 6 days, or I guess 8 days as the case may be, will get reacquainted tomorrow night. The Flames still holding on to that second wild card spot. I would imagine that, at this stage in the season, not a lot of people had them there. So I would think that people in Calgary are pleasantly surprised with how Calgary has done so far this year.
Yeah, it's weird, guys. It's kind of like a trying to think of the right way to put it, but there's kind of like a split among Flames fans. And I think there are a good number of fans who are super excited about what's going on, about them being in this playoff mix and holding down the wild card spot and honestly controlling their own playoff destiny. You take a look at who's behind them and the mess that is the Vancouver Canucks and how they can't seem to figure things out. And so they're 3 points back with one more game played. And I know in your market, there's never any sympathy for St. Louis, and they're just kind of like they're just do the Blues do anything for anybody at this point? And like they're fine. They win some games, but I don't know if anybody is really expecting them to go on this run that's going to track down a bunch of teams in front of them. And so they're 3 points back with 2 more games played. And so I think the way that the things look for the Flames right now is, they're in pretty good shape and they're in the driver's seat. They control their own destiny if they're going to get into the playoffs. And so I do think there's a lot of people who are excited about that and really happy about the way this group is playing. Like they play a really, from a fan standpoint, they're an easy team to get behind because they work their tails off and they have an identity that is very set and they don't have a superstar or two leading the way. It's just I hate the term, but it's kind of like a lunch bucket type team. But there's another group of fans, and I don't know what the split would be, but there's a pretty vocal group of fans that is kind of sick of the Flames being where they are, and that is smack dab in the middle, and smack dab right in the middle of the draft order. And the feeling was that this year was going to be the first year of them kind of taking a step back and try and not attempting to be bad, but maybe just the way the roster was set up and the way the rest of the Western Conference was shaping up. Maybe this is a year the Flames would get themselves another decent draft pick to be able to continue to get younger and build for the future. And yet here they are, despite trading away a vast majority of their core over the last 12 months, because we're going up on a year since Elias Lindholm was traded to Vancouver, and that started kind of an exodus of really important players here. Here they are. They didn't really replace those guys with anything close to the same caliber of players, and yet on the back of Dustin Wolf, they're exceeding expectations by a significant degree. So there's that group of fans. It's like, oh, come on, what the heck? We're always in the middle. And the year that we weren't supposed to be in the middle, here we are. We're right back there again. But I do think there's a significant group of fans that are pretty impressed and pretty happy with the way that this group has fought this year, and this group has been able to continue to keep themselves in the mix and every once in a while go into the building of the top team in the West and steal a game with an outstanding goaltending performance, right?
Absolutely. And Pat, you mentioned obviously the two big guys you're referencing that the Flames moved on from, Jacob Markstrom, Andrew Mangiapane, and that's why I think what the Flames have done is so impressive, because the expectations were relatively low for this team. So even though there's a significant portion of the Flames fan base that is like, okay, yeah, it's great, we're going to finish in the second wildcard spot, but then we're going to play the Jets in the first round, or we're going to play Vegas in the first round, and then we're going to just lose in 4 games. Like, before I ask about a certain player, like, to me, that's always like, I feel like there's similarities between what's happening in Calgary and what's happening in Montreal, right? There weren't a lot of people that thought Montreal was going to make the playoffs, and they might not make the playoffs. But the fact that they're overachieving, to me, it's always better to overachieve than to underachieve, right? And I think that portion of the Flames fan base that is unhappy with the team just continually being a middling team, you're never really going to change their minds, right? But as far as I'm concerned, like, it's always good to see a team doing better than you expected. And it's also, let's be honest, it's always good to have an extra Canadian team in the playoffs too.
Yeah. Well, and so Markstrom and Mangiapane were the two in the offseason. You go back to the beginning of 2024, it started with Lindholm, and then it was Chris Tanev, and then it was Noah Hannafin. And so you throw those 3 guys in with Mangiapane and then your franchise goalie, Jacob Markstrom. You're like, okay, well, maybe this team is going to take a slight step back. And yet this is where a lot of people who are kind of pro what the team is doing are kind of pushing back on the anti-crowd, and that is that a big reason for this team's success this year is their young players and is their group of, you know, the next group, and that's led by goaltender Dustin Wolf, and he's been so spectacular this year, and I think at this point, a little more than halfway through the season, it's been their unquestioned MVP. That, you know, you're like, okay, well, you want the team to get younger, they get younger, and they have gotten younger. They've made all these trades, and here they are, and they're having success because of their 23-year-old phenom goaltender, and so. Because of that, I think there's also a lot more. It's not like they're being led by a bunch of 32-year-olds.
Sure.
They've got a 23-year-old goalie who's excelling. They've brought in a 24-year-old defenseman in the Jacob Markstrom trade in Kevin Ball, and he's been a real revelation. I know Connor Zeri's hurt right now, but you take a look at Zeri and Matt Coronado. They're two of the forwards that are really driving this thing forward, and they've got some decent young players that haven't even come close to cracking the NHL that are also in this conversation. So yeah, I think that is another element to the whole conversation that's important, is that it's their young players that have been a really, really important part of this. And that's one of the things the Flames said they really wanted to do, and that is get younger, and continue getting younger. And they've done that. I mean, you can't deny that they've made a real effort to do that. And while they haven't had that first, second, even fifth overall pick and been able to bring that caliber of draft pick into the organization, they have had some really, really positive performances from their young potential new core players.
And another guy to throw in there, and I'm sure you've talked about him quite a bit over the last few weeks, Sportsnet 960, Rory Cairns, right? 4 assists in his first 5 games. He had a 115-point season or something like that for Sault Ste. Marie in the OHL. So that's looking like a absolute steal in the 6th round, right? You teed me up nicely there, Pat. I wanted to ask you about Matt Coronado because he was drafted a year after Cole Perfetti, but I feel like there's some similarities. Perfetti had his breakout season last year. And Coronado's up to 11 goals. He scored a week ago against the Jets. What's kind of stood out to you about Coronado? Because he looks like, obviously, you know, again, first-round pick, so the expectations are high. But based on, you know, how he played against the Jets, you're looking at that guy and you're like, that's a future 30-goal scorer there.
Yeah, and I think that we're kind of seeing that kind of potential really start to come to the forefront with him. So, you know, Coronado's been an interesting case. Obviously drafted out of the USHL and then went to college, and you know, because he went to a pretty good college, went to Harvard, you're like, okay, well, you can understand him. You can understand him being in a situation where he decided not to come out after his freshman year, but he did decide to come out after his sophomore year. And so he came out, joined the team down the stretch in 2023. They didn't make the playoffs that year, but did get into a game and was able to play his first NHL game. And then last year, so the training camp in 2023, he was he was outstanding. He was the best player in training camp in 2023, made the Flames out of camp, and then spent the first month with the Flames. But it really didn't. It was not the same type of impact. He was for about a month, he looked like a guy that didn't belong in the NHL. So they sent him to the American League, and he lit up the American League last year, came back up in the final month or so and was a little bit more successful. This year's been fascinating though, guys, because again, he was one of their best players in training camp and earned a spot out of camp, but they were in a situation where they were kind of overextended at forward. They had a lot of forwards. And so when some guys started getting healthy, and Yegor Sharangovich was the guy that started getting healthy, and he was injured late in training camp, and his injury kind of allowed Coronado to make the team. He comes back and they send Coronado down, and Flames fans were losing their mind. They're like, how can you send this guy back to the American League? Like, well, just hold on a second. Like, we're talking about a guy that is waiver exempt, and they've got a roster limit issue. The plan is to bring him back up ASAP. I think he went down for one game, and he was down for exactly 1 week. He came back up, and ever since he's been back up, he's been one of their best forwards. And he has been playing on a line with Michael Backlund and Blake Coleman pretty much since he came back up. And that's been an unbelievable fit. And now he's becoming more and more and more comfortable being the guy at the NHL level that he was in the American League, that he was in the NCAA. He's shooting it all the time. He's unleashing his shot. You saw the shot that he unleashed Saturday on Eric Comrie that beat him posting in and beat him from outside. And honestly, I don't think that was a bad goal for Comrie. It was just that's one of Calgary's 2 or 3 best shooters and one of the only guys that can finish from outside. And he went posting in, got kind of into a soft spot and blew it by him. And we're starting to see him do that more. And he doesn't always have to be in kind of the house or high danger area to do it, which is something the Flames haven't had in quite some time. So he's really, really started to turn into one of their most important players. And yes, he's a winger. So like, we're not talking about their core center ice piece, but he's a guy that you look at and he's a guy that going forward, I think that you can really see that him being a massive, massive part of this future. And it's neat to see him kind of show the evolution that he's shown. So he's been a really impressive and fun story this year.
You know, Pat, you talk about the future, and folks in Calgary get a chance to see the future every day because the Wranglers, of course, are playing out of in the same city. And that's one of the benefits. We see it here in Winnipeg, having the Moose and the Jets, obviously in the same city, same building. You get a chance to see both organizations or both teams and players, of course, the young players coming up. You know, when the Stockton Flames moved up for that 1 year in the Canadian division and then went back to Stockton, then moved obviously back to Calgary. And now they've been there for the last, I think, 3 years. What benefits are you seeing from the team having their AHL team in the same city as the NHL team?
Well, it's been cool just from a standpoint of being able to see players in the same building and get an opportunity, whether it's me or Flames fans, to be able to check that out. It's a lower price point, so you've got some people that maybe NHL season tickets aren't feasible. American League season tickets are a whole lot more realistic. But I do think what it's allowed them to do is make things that much more seamless in terms of bringing players from the farm team into the NHL and going back over the last 3 years. This is season 3. You're right, of the Wranglers being in Calgary. You know, they've used a lot of guys, and looking back to last year and what they've done this year, from Connor Zary, Martin Pospisil, Jacob Pelche, Matt Coronado, Rory Cairns, as he mentioned, and like they've used a lot of guys that have stepped in really seamlessly from the American League and done the job. And I think that's a credit to the AHL coaching staff. I think that's a credit to their model, the idea that they really want to have the guys at the American League level play the same brand of hockey that they play in the NHL, so guys can step in. But I also think that having the team in the same city and having the team play out of the Saddle Dome and having the facility so close by, I think really has helped guys step in. It's been big for cap reasons because they've been able to recall guys day of game because they've been in the same city as opposed to having to recall them a little earlier. So it's been a really neat fit, and I don't think the Flames organization is looking at changing that model anytime soon. They really like having the Wranglers in town. It's definitely, the Saddle Dome's the oldest building in the NHL, so there's some cramped space at times, and it's not meant to have 3 hockey teams and a lacrosse team playing out of it, but it is right now. But yeah, I think it's been a really good fit, and I think that the success of Calgary's American League model has just gotten better since they moved the team from Northern California to the Saddle Dome, and I think they're really happy with it.
Last question for you, Pat, and it sort of has to do with the Wranglers. Devin Cooley, who of course is putting up just spectacular numbers at the
Moose Killer
level.
Drew, you got to preface him. He's a Moose Killer. He killed him when he played for Milwaukee, and now for the Wranglers.
Right. But even going back to his time with Milwaukee, his numbers were never what they are this year. Does that change the calculus that Calgary has as it pertains to their goaltending in the future? I mean, Dustin Wolf has been terrific this year for the Flames. You know, Vladar's an unrestricted free agent at season's end. You know, how does Devin Cooley's performance, because, you know, I've read about it on Daily Faceoff a couple times. Our buddy Frank Saravelli is talking up Cooley as, you know, maybe the, a potential answer or tandem partner with Dustin Wolf moving forward. You know, Cooley's never done this at the AHL level to the extent that he's doing it right now. How does that change the calculus for the Flames and their goaltending position?
Well, okay, so I think the important thing, number one, is that Dustin Wolf is the guy that they want to have as their kind of goaltending leader going forward. They see him as their future number one without question, and for good reason. He's having a spectacular year. But I do think so. I know so the Flames goaltending department's headed up by Jordan Sigalet, and so when Jordan Sigalet and then his crew, NHL goalie coach Jason LaBarbera and American League goalie coach Mackenzie Skapski, you know, they were really high on Cooley, and they had targeted him, and he was really their only goaltending free agent target last summer. So they really saw something there, and they had been high on Cooley, you know, going back to the season prior, and really felt like, hey, this is a guy that if the Sharks decide not to bring him back, we really think that this is a good fit, and that wasn't, you know, the pitch they made to Cooley in his camp was, you know, not only is there a chance for NHL playing time immediately, but you're going to be the unquestioned American League one if it goes that way, and you'll be the first call up if somebody gets hurt at the NHL level. But like, you've got a real opportunity to play a number of games, not at the NHL level necessarily, but at the American League level that you've never played before. And you're right, like, he's never had the success, nor has he ever played this much at the AHL level. And I can tell you, because we just had Sigalet on my show Flames Talk earlier this week, I can tell you that the Flames are even more impressed and definitely surprised as to how good it's worked out, and it's exceeded their high expectations. And a big reason for that is Wolf came in and he immediately bonded and worked well with AHL goalie coach Mackenzie Skapski, and that has been a really good match. And they've worked on and they've made some instant changes to his game. Like, Cooley's always had through the roof athleticism, and his technical skills have always been A+, but, you know, his fundamentals and his reads on things, and, you know, maybe being too reliant on his athleticism, like his raw skills are great. And the potential, I said technical abilities, but I meant raw skills. Now he needs to refine those things to make it so that the technical side of things and the fundamentals are a whole lot better. And that's what he's worked on in the American League. And the results are some of the best numbers in the AHL. So has it changed the calculus? I don't think it has for the rest of this season. I think right now, Dustin Wolf has started 12 of the last 16 games. If he starts tonight in Minnesota, which would be 8 of the last 9, he's really taken over this crease, and for good reason. But I don't think that they want to move on from Vladar unless they get a great deal for him. They don't want to move on from Vladar and turn this into a situation where now Cooley, who's playing a ton and getting this great opportunity to develop, comes up to replace Vladar, who gets moved, and now he's clearly an NHL number 2, and maybe that development stalls a little bit. I think they'd really, if all things are being equal, I think they'd really like to keep Vladar for the rest of the season, have him be the 1B or maybe the 2, step into the tougher spots, step into the second halves of back-to-backs, give Wolf the rest when they need it, and then they can kind of say at the end of the year, make a decision, and I think that decision likely will be Vladar moving on into free agency, and then next year they can move Cooley into the NHL ranks and have those two guys as a tandem. So I do think what it has done is make it so that the prospects of keeping Vladar and re-signing him are a whole lot less than they would have been had they not been able to find an answer in the American League and not been able to find a really promising goalie who might be able to step into the NHL as early as this year, but more likely next year. And then his contract's also a one-way deal next year too. So all those things combined, I think that it has changed the calculus in the bigger picture, just maybe not for the rest of this season.
Pat Steinberg, Sportsnet 960 in Calgary, great insight into the Flames as always. Pat, appreciate your time. Thanks for joining us this morning on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Take care, Pat.
Thanks, Pat.
Take care. All the best.
Thank you.
There he goes. Great guest, great insight into the Flames, the Jets and the Flames tomorrow at 5 o'clock. Post-game show right around 7:30, 7:45. Be sure to keep it locked back here onto our YouTube channel. We'll take our final break of the show. We come back, Dave M. with some quick Moose news and, of course, some of the prospects. He'll give some updates on that as well. Don't go anywhere. More to come of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show live on this Saturday morning, presented by Play Now. Welcome back to the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Real fun Saturday morning here on the program. It's always a good time when we can get together with Pat Steinberg. It's always a good time when we can get together with our buddy Jamie Thomas as well. Got to give a shout out to a young listener of the show. Last weekend, I was watching my son play soccer, and I looked over my shoulder, and this young man, probably about 9-10 years old or so, he tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, "Excuse me, sir." And I said, "Yes, buddy." He said, "Are you Dave Minuk from the Illegal Curve Hockey Show?" And I said, "I'm not. I'm Drew Mindell from the Illegal Curve Hockey Show, but I'll take that nonetheless," and I appreciate it. I believe his name, if I'm not mistaken, was Jeremiah. Jeremiah says that he listens to the show and the post-game show with his dad all the time. So a shout out to Jeremiah. It's okay that you confused me with Dave. I'm happy to take that as a compliment, but we do appreciate, of course, your continued viewership and your continued listenership here of the show. And one other shout out, I just saw it come out on Twitter. It's always his birthday, so it might as well always be his dad's birthday. Happy birthday to Ken Wiebe Sr., celebrating 75 years young today. So a shout out to Ken's dad, Ken Sr. as well. Dave, what's been going on with the Manitoba Moose? It's a Minuk Moose Minute.
Put on your antlers. It's time for the Minuk Moose Minute on the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
What is going on with the Moose? Well, nothing good. They might want to stay on the road, which is where they're going to be heading after today's game against the Grand Rapids Griffins. They're heading out on a 3-game road trip to, I think, Rockford and Milwaukee, or maybe Chicago and Milwaukee, but it's somewhere in that region. And right now the Moose are not having a lot of success in their home barn. Of course, last weekend shut out twice by Matt Murray and those Toronto Marlies. And it was funny because I saw Matt Murray got recalled, and I was like, I know folks might be excited about the fact that he had 2 shutouts, but it was 2 shutouts against the Moose team that couldn't score. So not a lot to be excited about, but the 2-time Stanley Cup winner is heading back up to Toronto. I don't know if he's still there right now. This isn't Leafs lunch, of course. So the Moose couldn't score. Well, that wasn't a problem in the game on Thursday night, guys. 18-5, not the goals. The shots, though, in favor of the Manitoba Moose after the first period. The problem was it was 1-1. So they are, got a goal, but they gave up a goal, 1 on 5 shots. Not great. Thomas Milic was in net. And then the second period, they had another good period. They scored twice. So they had a 3-1 lead heading into that third period. And you're like, okay, here we go. The Moose are rolling. Instead, Grand Rapids, who's the number 1 team in the Central, they got things going. They scored 3 goals in about 3.5 minutes, to make it a 4-3 game. Another goal was scored about 5 minutes later to make it 5-3. Moose scored. Parker Ford, he got the first Moose player to double digits, just to be clear, first player to double digits. He got his 9th and 10th, I should say, in the game. He scored with about 11 seconds to go. But goal scoring is clearly the biggest problem right now for this team. That will help, hopefully, with the addition, as Drew mentioned before, that Brad Lambert is returning with off loan. I think you're going to see Brad Lambert yo-yo right now, guys, because of the fact that the Jets only have 12 forwards, and even if they're healthy, whatever, you're still going to need that insurance. So I suspect they want Lambert to get some games in, keep his legs fresh, And then if they need him, I don't they'll need him for tomorrow, but they'll have him, and I suspect he'll go on the road with the Jets, as Drew said, out east.
Sorry, Dave, I'm just picturing Brad Lambert like walking around Canada Life Center with a yo-yo, like going back from the Jets dressing room to the Moose dressing room, like constantly playing with a yo-yo.
Walk the dog, whatever some of the other yo-yo tricks are. I don't remember I haven't used the yo-yo in a while.
Walk the dog was a big one for sure, Drew.
Yeah. Partisan Paul's asking me about Chaz Lucius and how he's played well. He had an assist in the last game. He's playing better. And the most important point, to be honest with you, he's playing. And that is the key for the 2021 first rounder of the Jets. It's not about of course you want him to score, you want him to put up points, but as Cole Perfetti talked about, it's sometimes, especially with younger players, it's really about how their overall game is and how they're playing away from the puck. He's not up the middle. He's on the wing, because I saw one of the comments earlier was about whether, he's a center. I gave up on, they said, did you give up on him as a center? I'm like, well, first of all, I don't have any control where he plays. That's Mark Morrison's decision, and they moved him to the wing. So he is not a center right now for the Moose. They've got
you
him
do
on the
have
wing.
some influence, though. Mark Morrison does listen to you.
No,
well, I would say he listens to me when I ask him questions, but he doesn't really listen to me when I direct what he does with his organization. But I would say that, Chaz Lucius, who reminded me that, when he was at the University of Minnesota, he did play on the wing. So it's not an unfamiliar position for him. But anyways, the most important thing for him is to be playing games. So he's playing games. Moose will be playing in about 3 hours. It's Mascot Palooza, as the official Illegal Curve mascot. You'll be heading down there to represent our brand at Canada Life Center.
Well, the best thing is I don't have to put a heavy costume on. I just show up as myself, right?
Absolutely, the bearded man of IC. So you'll be down there celebrating, and it sounds like it'll be a good crowd. We gave away tickets in the Illegal Curve zone. So like I said, you'll see Dominic Toninato, the captain of the Moose. He's back, of course, with the organization. Was returned on Thursday, and Brad Lambert returned today. So they'll have, again, they've got a good lineup. They should be able to do some things. We'll see who's in net, and we'll see exactly how it's configured. But, like I said, Isaac Phillips making an impact, Dylan Coughlin making an impact. So we'll see what happens this afternoon at 2:00.
And for all of the junior prospects and those prospects playing college hockey, go check out Dave's social media. No. We're overtime already.
No, hold on. I'm just going to say, we got to look.
Okay.
I agree.
Colby Barlow.
I'll give Cole. That's all I'm going to do is Colby Barlow's. When you get 4 goals, you got to get at least some recognition. And sure. Colby Barlow, who had an incredibly slow start for Oshawa, only had in his first 10 games, had a goal and 2 assists. And since that time, he has been on fire. 25 goals, 18 assists for him. 21 goals, 16 assists.
26 goals, Dave. I'm on his hockey deep.
No. But I'm saying if you eliminate the first 10 games, then he's got 25 goals and 16 assists for 41 points in his last 32 games. He's on an 8-game point streak. He had 4 goals yesterday for Oshawa. One of them was a shorthanded goal. One of them was a power play goal. A couple of 5-on-5 goals. So, I mean, that's his bag, is scoring. And so that's what you need him to be doing. And he's back up, he's up over a point per game pace. And again, like I said, if you eliminate the first 10, which is easy for me to do, but if you do that in the 32 games since, he's at like 1.16, which is not that far off from his average from, it's better than last year. And it's just a little bit below his draft year. So his numbers have been a lot better. He's on a good Oshawa team, just was off to a slow start. So we'll see if he can continue. And quickly, Braden Yeager, the 2023 first rounder over in the WHL. Got to give Western Hockey League some love, Drew. He had 2 assists yesterday for Lethbridge. They've won 9 in a row, so he's having some success as well.
Much more about the Jets' young players, young prospects on Dave's social media account at ICDave. That does it for us on this Saturday morning edition of the Illegal Curve Hockey Show. Big thanks to all of you for joining us. Great job chatting it up, having some fun with us. If you haven't already done so, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the podcast, leave us feedback, and most importantly, go advocate for us. Go proselytize for us. Go say how great it is to spend Saturday morning with Illegal Curve.
Tell Dave how good of an uncle he is.
There you go.
Wouldn't it be great if I could punch Drew right through the screen? Can you imagine all of a sudden you just see a fist
I'm
coming?
going to punch him up. Here, look. Here, Dave, you get him from the side. I'll punch him up.
There you go. You guys can work
I
on
was gonna
that.
punching you there.
Yeah.
We look forward to seeing everybody again tomorrow night, the Illegal Curve post-game show right around 7:30, 7:45. In the interim, the Jets are practicing in about an hour, so keep it locked to illegalcurve.com for all the latest on the Winnipeg Jets practice. And they're practicing at Hockey for All Center. So, of course, that's open to the public. So if you're looking for something to do, maybe watch the Jets go through the practice. You can check it out to get to the Hockey for All Center, and you can see the Jets practice in about 1 hour's time.
Exact same lines as yesterday.
Well, whatever it is, you can still see them practice. Thanks to everyone for joining us. Big thanks to all the sponsors who make this show, the post-game show, the website, a possibility. Rumors Restaurant and Comedy Club, Play Now, Holt Dental, Boston Pizza, City Place, and Seagram. Support these fine businesses because of their continued support of Illegal Curve Hockey. These two yutzes are continuing to try to punch me. So that's my cue to hit the end of the show button. For Dave Minuk, for Ezra Ginsburg, I'm your host, Drew Mandel. If it's Saturday, it's the Illegal Curve Hockey Show.
Thanks for listening to this broadcast from Illegal Curve Hockey. For more great Illegal Curve content, subscribe to the Illegal Curve YouTube channel, follow @IllegalCurve on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and visit your online home for hockey in Winnipeg, illegalcurve.com.